I gave people all the stuff they really needed. Social Security checks, utility bills, TV guide.
I want a TV guidance counselor. TV guidance counselor. Staying up to watch all night, and everything's gonna be alright with my TV guidance counselor.
Hey everybody, welcome to TV Guidance Counselor. I am Ken Reed, your fellow TV Guidance Counselor. Your fellow TV Guidance Counselor? You know what? I've just deputized you. For 2025, you are a TV Guidance Counselor. If you want to make a certificate or a badge or something, you can do that. You could do that anyway. You don't need permission from me. Anyway, I'm not here to give you powers under the Constitution. I'm here to talk about classic TV with interesting people. And this week we have a returning guest, Matt Knudsen. Matt is a super funny comedian, actor, writer. He was on the show over 10 years ago, which we talk about here, which is kind of insane. Love Matt. He's such a good dude. He has a great book called Have I Seen You in Anything? You can buy it at mattknudsen.com, or it's on Amazon as well. I'll put links in the show description. Just a good dude. Really, really love him. He's a hell of a hunk and a good dude. So I think you'll enjoy this episode very much. If you have guests you would like me to try to get on the show, or guests you would like me to have return to the show, it's not a prerequisite that it's 10 years in between appearances. But if there's someone you'd like to have me back on the show or anything like that, you can email me at tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com or ken@kenread.com or kenreadtvgc@gmail.com. Also on all the social, well, no, I'm not on all social media. I'm on Blue Sky, so you can find me on there. Or you can just go to patreon.com/tvguidancecounselor. You can be a free member if you want. If you're a $5 and up member, you would have got a PDF of this week's TV guide, so you could follow along. Or I'm on YouTube. YouTube is like the one social media that I'm still on and don't have a problem with at the moment. So we have the TV Guidance Counselor channel on there. I will continue to post some stuff on there. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about classic TV with returning guest Matt Knudsen. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of TV Guidance Counselor with my guest, Matt Knudsen.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
Matt Knudsen, how are you, sir?
Hey, don't wake me up. I'm living the dream. Thank you so much for having me, Ken.
You're so welcome. It's so nice to have you back. The last time we did this was almost 10 years ago.
Yay, I can't believe we look exactly the same.
If not younger, frankly.
Sure.
Yeah, I was, you came over Shane Moss's apartment in Malibu that I was crashing at, and we recorded there.
Wow, remarkable.
May 2015.
Sunrise, sunset.
Yes,
Yeah.
Indeed. So I'm excited to have you back. It should have happened sooner. My fault. Also, and I don't normally comment on people's backgrounds, but you have the greatest dad tool chest behind you that I must compliment.
Hey, thank you so much. If it helps, it's full of art supplies.
Nice. Well, that's even better. It looks like it looks like a classic Sears.
It is. It's a legit Craftsman thing on wheels that you would see in a shop.
Nice.
But my wife is a traditional artist, so that's full of like X-Acto blades and triangles.
Nice. As the craftsman truly wanted.
As the true craftsman that she is.
I just read the last, because K-Mart bought Sears a few years ago, and the literally last K-Mart just closed this week.
Rest in peace,
Yeah.
K-Mart. Yeah.
So where did you grow up again?
Well, I was born in Hawaii, and then my family moved from Hawaii to Iowa.
Okay.
And I kind of grew up the Midwest around there. And then ultimately, my family moved to Southern California from North Dakota. And that's where I finished high school and kind of started my life there. So kind of a hybrid. But there's also that age where, like, before you're 18, you just move where your parents go because you
don't have a choice.
That's the move. You don't have any money.
You're like,
sure, you may have ideas.
You know what, guys? I'm going to hang here. I'll catch up with you later. I'll catch up later.
I'm going to keep living on this Bible camp because I'm 9.
This is fantastic. What was like the go-to department store there in the Midwest?
Well, I would say Sears, maybe a J.C. Penney's, K-Mart. I remember getting the catalog for my grandparents, and for Christmas, and you could find something like a Buck Rogers toy or something, and pick that out, and they'd send it to you. So, but we also, in those areas, they were kind of small farming towns. So like the big mall was like, I remember we'd have to go to drive to South Dakota to go to something called the Prairie Market, which was like the predecessor to Costco or Sam's Club, but it was in a different state. So we'd go there maybe like a few times a year, and it was always like,
hopefully we need pillows at the border.
Yeah, exactly. What? So you have your papers? Well, we're just traveling interstate.
Seems like bulk items. They do stop in New Hampshire and Maine. There's various laws in New Hampshire, Maine, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts. So number one, you're not allowed to take wood into Maine.
Really?
Yes.
What's the reasoning behind that?
There's invasive things that could be in firewood that will ruin the trees. So it's a major, they pull cars over, they search them for firewood, and it's a serious offense if you're trying to smuggle firewood into Maine.
Right. All right. Wow.
Which sounds like a stupid joke. Maine, where this guy got arrested for smuggling firewood. It's no, that's an actual offense. You could actually go to prison for that. And then the other one is the fireworks. So they, around 4th of July, they just park at the border of New Hampshire, Massachusetts. And it's so funny to me because you can tell, when you're driving by, you see the cars they've pulled over, and all of them have fireworks because the cops are like, oh, yeah, this guy.
Right. That's right. Where do you live? Swamp Scott?
Yeah.
Step out of the car, sir.
Yeah. Is that an IROC? Pull over for me. Just pop the
truck. I'm being accurately profiled.
Yes.
Yes, you are, sir. Please step out of the car.
He's fair enough. Fair play. Those are the kind of guys who are I got some fucking fireworks. Check this shit out. They're we're going to have to take them and find you and be like, hey, whatever, I fucking got them though. Do you see this shit? So that's it wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility that the
sure, absolutely. Well, they're also there's a nice cross section of the firewood offenders too.
Yes. Yes.
Sir, would you mind popping the trunk of your IROC? Hey, I'll pop you. How's it?
I fucking chopped this shit myself. Hey, George fucking Washington chopped down cherry trees. What free speech? So with that said, you move around a lot, and it's always interesting. I think we talked about this last time a little bit now that I'm remembering, where, TV becomes the constant, especially network TV. And so everyone I know, kids who had military parents, moved around a lot. It's became TV kids, whether they wanted to or not, because that was the constant.
True. And then we didn't even really get our first proper big TV that had color until we actually moved to Southern California. Because when we were doing the Midwest thing, it was just this little small black and white thing that they'd plug in and kind of get whatever you want. But then it was also very easy to unplug and put in the closet if it was there was any kind of punitive measures taken. No TV. Yeah. They would just take it away for a week, and it was,
abusive.
That's life. It was abusive. It was nonsense.
I feel like California, when you move to Southern California, they would check your car at the border and be like, where's your color TV?
Where's your color TV?
We only have the black and white. And be like, we're going to have to issue you a state issued color TV.
Totally.
Can't have that.
Yeah, totally. But I distinctly remember watching old SCTV on that black and white TV, and you're so close to Canada. It was kind of on their channels, and you felt so, I don't know if subversive is the word, but as a kid, you're you don't even know what sketch comedy is. Oh, yeah. It's a series of scenes that connect, and you're doing Count Floyd spooky theater, and you're 10, you don't know what's going on.
Well, there is something sort of magical about pulling stuff in over the airwaves, especially from another country, or if it's barely, because it's almost what I imagine it felt like to be a computer hacker.
Right.
You're whoa, look what I've put, because no one else, you're I don't know how this worked or what magic alchemy made this come in my TV. And I don't know if I could ever recreate it. So you would get all kinds of weird stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it was a very influential memory. My dad and my two brothers and I, we went on some fishing trip, and we were staying at some like the cheap kind of motel where your car parks in the front, but they had cable TV, and I remember flipping on the cable TV and seeing Nickelodeon, and it was you can't do that on television, and they had kids around my age popping out of their lockers and like telling jokes, and I was like,
This is a possibility.
that is the thing, yeah, so
Did you
yeah,
ever get to work with any of the SCTV people? Because for people who don't know about you've been in a billion things. Like
that's so kind of you to say. No, I've never worked with any of them. Just long time admirer.
Dave Thomas is around. He did the show, which was crazy. We got some.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. No way. Eh?
Yeah. Oh, he had some great stories. Best John Candy stories I've ever heard, which was fantastic.
I bet. Yeah, but and that's the thing about like being in the entertainment industry. Everyone associated, even if they haven't been in the arena that long, they're like, hey, so anyway, I was sharing a Uber with Ruth Buzzy.
Right.
Go on,
Yeah.
They have these incredible stories that you just have to like just be present and listen to and enjoy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's always like, the weirdest thing someone would say to you, like, and then all of a sudden,
Right.
Geechee
Yeah.
guy said, "Are you waiting for this taxi?" Or
Yeah.
whatever it was.
Well, there was I was going through the TV guidance counselor, the TV guide, and he's just like, never tell you about the time I was sitting next to Stacey Keach at the close-up room at the Magic Castle. What happened was,
Yeah,
it sounds so ridiculous, but it's all true.
Oh yeah, there's a movie he's in with Sean Astin and Bruce Campbell that's shot in Vermont, and it's like Die Hard at a ski lodge, basically.
Yeah.
And, Stacey Keach plays like this woman's dad, but he keeps talking about timeshares in it, and the amazing way Stacey Keach says timeshare is a timeshare. It's like the perfect thing.
Yeah, well, I was sitting next to him at the Magic Castle, and he was really drunk.
Yeah, that sounds right.
He was trying to get the magician to do the trick again, so he could try and I saw it once and I didn't figure out do it again. It's just like, granted, I'm not a magician, but I do know one of the rules is do not do it again.
Although he's a pretty intimidating guy. If anyone could get them to do it it probably would be him.
Yeah, he was up there.
Mike Hammer
just assume he's tacky.
Yeah,
that's right.
He had a mustache. I don't think you guys understand.
Yeah, totally.
Have you ever seen maybe not if you don't have cable, there was a filmed play that HBO put on of Wait Until Dark in 1982 or 83, and Stacey Keach is the villain character in it. And I had Judd Winnick on, and he was saying him and his brother were completely horrified, and like just it was so scary because at the end, after he's gonna leave, he's dressing up as a woman to like sneak out of the thing. So it's Stacey Keach like putting on like lipstick and just being like, and then I'll murder you. It's like this really, it's online. You can see it. It's the weirdest play.
That might be worth a deep dive.
Yeah, relishing it. So the issue here you picked was January 3rd to the 9th, 98. Were you in LA at this time?
The reason I picked it is because it was right around the era that I moved to Los Angeles. This is January 3rd through the 9th, and I moved to LA in March of 1998. So literally half my life ago.
It was the Smash Mouth era of LA, I'd call that.
Don't delay, act now. Yeah, move to LA.
That whole year, the whole area of Southern California was walking on the sun.
Yeah, totally. And also, when I first moved to Los Angeles, I didn't know anybody. So I just started doing like production assistant work for free just to kind of get your foot in the door and, kind of figure out what it's like to be in that environment with no experience.
Had you done any of that kind of stuff where you lived before? Or was this like the first time, like just
never? Yeah, first time jumping in, and I didn't have any family or contacts or anyone. I would like literally go on like Backstage West or like go to the film schools locally in town and just be like, hey, you need an extra set of hands on, I can empty the trash cans. I know how to be there on time with a good attitude.
Right.
Is that what, I can work for free. Like, welcome aboard.
I'll work for free and hard and on time. Here's my old address in the Midwest. That's all you need to know.
Right this way, sir. Do you know how to charge walkie-talkie batteries? No, I don't.
What's a walkie-talkie?
Yeah, exactly. Give me a brick for this, but yeah, that was my initial surge into LA. So I did have some money from like a previous career. I was a merchant marine. And but when I moved to Los Angeles, I had to take out a loan to get my first apartment.
That's smart. Most people just like don't even have any money and just are like, I don't know how I got my first apartment. I think someone willed it to me, but mostly because they died in it while I was there.
Yeah, I just wanted to have I think I took enough for like 3 months of like rent, like first last months, and and then after that, just kind of grind it out and hustle, and then hopefully what do they say, jump and the net will appear? I think that's kind of hokey, but that really makes a lot of sense of just like, well, you're here.
Yeah, it's a sink or swim kind of thing. Where was your first apartment? Was it in like a terrible area, or did you get like a decent?
Well, there's a joke I did on Conan, which is really true. It's like when I first moved to LA, I had some very strict criteria for my first LA apartment. I needed to be affordable, but I also wanted to live in a super dangerous neighborhood. So it was a win-win. I lived like off Washington Boulevard. It was probably about 3 blocks north of the Culver City projects. And that was a really, at the time too, and it's still kind of, dicey, a hub of LA gang activity.
Yeah.
And they have guns, and you can be in your apartment and you hear guns. That was another joke. I was just like, July 4th is always my favorite time of year. It's the one time you could actually guess it's probably fireworks. The rest of the time it was a turf war. Yeah,
it's the height of sort of the gangster rap. And it was a real thing.
And there was a lot of guys that were in gangs that lived in, because my street was just like apartments, you know what I mean? Like it was just a series of these big apartment buildings. And, every building had like 18 units, and every unit had like 4 people living in them. And,
And you survived that. So everything else was easier afterwards.
And I survived. And I still like give that place a nostalgic, drive by, no pun intended.
It's a love
just because it's still there. Yeah, it's still there. But when I first moved, my brother and I got a 2-bedroom place with 2 bathrooms, and it was $825 a month.
Nice.
So I told myself, like, if I can make $100 per week, I got, So I did that, and then I had one of those like checks from the Discover card that you can write yourself for cash. It's just like, well, you're going to be paying 35% interest on it. Yeah. But it's just
deal with that later.
And deal with that later. It's just in case, like an emergency, in lieu of an emergency fund.
I need a TV.
You had a high interest loan from a predatory lender.
That's America. That's the true American dream right there.
Totally.
So there's a lot of weird stuff about 98 that I forgot about, like before we get to the listings in here, some of the articles. So first of all, there's a cool little thing where they give kind of they're proud that TV Guide is featured in the Kevin Costner post-apocalyptic film, The Postman.
Nice. Hey, I think anyone would be proud of that.
He really was determined to try and make a post-apocalyptic film work between Waterworld and The Postman, and it was not happening.
Yeah, they're not happening. Also, too, like in all of those movies, I rarely see like that things are like way better.
Oh yeah.
It's like, well, it's a post-apocalypse, and now look, everyone's got a house, and it's they got food for everyone. It's just, it's all Cormac McCarthy.
Yes. Oh yeah, like people are eating people. Which for some reason people want to see, I guess because they're like, well, it's not so bad now.
Right.
I feel like those movies are a genre I would call, I'll give you something to cry about. Oh yeah.
Hilarious. Yeah. Proudly featured in The Postman.
Yes. Post-apocalyptic. Yes.
And we don't need to address this in any way aside from a cursory reading. But I actually, when I first moved to LA, literally knew no one. As I scrolled through the TV Guide, I just made a note of every person in it that I have a personal story with right
fantastic.
now.
Yeah.
Would you like to hear the list?
Yes, go
You
for
don't
it.
no comment necessary, but
Just the list.
Beck, Heather Locklear, Richard Karn, Alex Trebek, Luke Perry, Patrick Stewart, General Hospital, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Alicia Silverstone, Kevin Nealon, Wayne Newton, Rob Lowe, David Duchovny, Ray Romano, Bob Newhart, Jenny McCarthy, Jackson Brown, Usher, Leah Thompson, Kelsey Grammer, Dylan McDermott, Fran Drescher, Bill Cosby, Mike Judge, Harrison Ford.
So we'll just hear the ones about the dead people.
Just the Cosby ones.
Yeah.
Give me on the straight Cosby.
Yeah. I've heard some Cosby stories. Yeah.
Withdrawn.
So there's that there. As they come up, maybe I'll bug you for some of those because I am
Please,
curious.
by all means.
Then there's the thing about Eric Stoltz, who I don't know Eric Stoltz.
Me neither.
Everyone who I've heard talk about Eric Stoltz without saying he's a dickhead seems to imply he's a dickhead. I never heard anything specific, but like context clues, he seems difficult.
Yeah, I can see that. I've never had a personal encounter. I don't have enough information, but
yeah,
I just in my esteem, if you hear it from like 2 or 3 different people, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
If I ever met him, I wouldn't be like, "Wait, I heard you're a dick."
Yeah.
You're just like, well.
Yeah, or it just seems like he's way too serious or something. Like anyone who's been fired from more than one movie during shooting,
right?
I'm like, it might be you,
right?
There's an article in here about how he's in a new thing called the blackout effect, which is like a made-for-TV version of the trigger effect. Essentially, it's like something. And then there's a thing about Michael Dorn, who's Worf on Star Trek Next Generation. He's guest starring in a number of episodes of Silk Stockings.
Great,
because he's dating star Janet Gunn.
Well, hey, I mean, why date the star if they're not going to give you some EPs? And ironically enough, Michael Dorn and I have the same agent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, same agent as Worf.
Maybe if
I think he does, him and the whole crew do a lot of the convention scenes and stuff.
Oh, yeah, a ton.
So they're still very popular with the cons.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not a huge Star Trek guy, but when I was getting hired to run panels at cons, I had to do a lot of crash courses in Star Trek because I was interviewing a lot of Star Trek people. Yeah, but Dorn, you should get in that Silk Stockings.
I should,
bring that back. That needs a reboot.
Let's come on, Nick, get on it. And then I have this like kind of ongoing joke that I post on social media. It's like every May 4th, I made a meme of Spock doing the Vulcan salute. And it says, "May the Force be with you," and I just post that online. People just,
I do one that no one ever gets, where it's that like Justin Timberlake, "It's gonna be May" thing.
I'm not sure I know that one.
Oh, so like that what was he in Sync? That song that went,
"Oh yes,
it's gonna be May." So like the last night of April, they post him saying it's gonna be May so like I would post what's his name? The one who looks like a monkey from Danny Wood from New Kids on the Block. And it would just be like, "It's about to be February" or something. People would be like, "I don't understand." And I'm like,
"This deep cut
never works." Like, it's funny to me.
I got 2 likes. Yeah.
This one's just for me.
Yeah.
I also forgot about Janet Reno, who was not on your list.
Right. Not on my list, but I do remember Will Ferrell doing a pretty good satirization of her, which made me laugh.
Which is what I thought this would be about, but it's because it says, "Attention, Janet Reno, you're about to be spoofed." But it says, "on Fox's Ally McBeal."
Right.
A casting call went out recently from executive producer David E. Kelly's offices for, quote, "a dead ringer for our current attorney general." According to the bulletin, Reno, sitting alone in a bar, is delighted when smarmy lawyer Richard Fish, played by actor Greg Germain, begins, quote, "rubbing her neck while pretending to brush off some dirt." Later, Reno, quote, "much to everyone's horror, takes to the dance floor."
Hey, 3 lines, 3 scenes, and a lifetime of memories.
Yep. And you look like
That's
Janet
funny.
Reno.
I had the extreme pleasure of going to the season 2 premiere of Shrinking. And Harrison Ford was there, and on his arm was Callista
I
Flockhart.
thought you were going to say Janet Reno, but I was.
And you wait for it, and Janet Reno. They were in some. They were in a throuple.
They seem to be.
I think she passed away.
I think she did. Yeah, with an even better story. They seem to be one of those couples that they got a ton of crap because he was so much older than her. But then they've been together for like 30 years.
Right. And he's just, I would be with Harrison Ford.
I think we all would.
I would be his boyfriend, just whatever.
I think we'd have no choice if he told us we were going to be.
Yeah. And also when you saw them spending time together, they felt like they were like holding hands and walking around. Like, hey, it's 30 years. That's kind of sweet.
It never seemed like it was like, why is that guy giving his daughter's friend a ride? Which is rare.
Yeah, no, it was being a part of it in any way has been an incredible gift. I'm very grateful for.
And then there's Gene Siskel's little movie reviews, which were the late 90s, were a great addition to TV Guide. And this one is mostly about the TV debut of Secrets and Lies, the Mike Leigh movie. But what I really enjoyed was his final paragraph where he says, and finally, here are two very different creatures. Take a pass on Joe's Apartment, a comedy about a guy living with talking cockroaches.
Oh, dear.
But do make a date with fierce creatures on Stars. And I'm just like, yeah, that's, oh boy.
Right.
Joe's Apartment. That, oof.
I have to say, I don't recall anything about Joe's Apartment.
It started as an MTV interstitial commercial. That was like a 30-second, some guy had cockroaches that he talked to and were his friends. For some reason, they were like, let's make this a movie.
Right.
And they cast Jerry O'Connell as Joe. And it's like about this guy in New York who breaks up with his girlfriend and the roaches like try to help him get her back.
Wow.
But it's not great. It's very 1998.
Maybe I'll have to do a YouTube search for that too. There was a few things in here where I was just like, if this says anything about the project, I don't remember it at all.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Although
God bless Jerry O'Connell, been famous for 50 years.
Oh yeah. My Secret Identity did not stop his career. Then there's the amazing story in here. This story is written by Frank DeCara, who's been on the show. But they gave away a replica Simpsons house in Las Vegas. And
amazing.
The person hated it. And infamously, it sat abandoned for like a decade and a half.
Wow.
It's still there. The people have repainted it and everything and don't know it used to be the Simpsons house. It's like this beautiful, sad story of things just like someone winning a contest and it just rotting.
This is all news to me, Ken.
This is important news that you know that
it's
house
breaking.
Breaking news. Simpsons
That's
house.
remarkable. I thought someone would I'm looking at the article now. They're like lounging around with smiles on their faces.
Yeah, it looks fun.
What did I miss?
You got to live in the desert in Nevada, so there's that.
Yeah. There's so many people who talk about I'm going to get that house in Wyoming or, insert name of the getaway spot. It's like, go live there for 30 days. And
you'll be trying to get away from there.
Let's put this fantasy to bed.
And then there's an article on Belzer in here because I'm always shocked that, what did he die last year or 2 years ago?
Few.
People didn't know he was a stand-up. They only know, this article is about how he's starting in Homicide. And it's like this big weird thing that the stand-up comic is doing this serious role.
Yeah,
Meanwhile, fast forward to 21st century. And if you tell people Richard Belzer is a stand-up, they're like, what are you going to tell me next? Ice-T used to rap?
Totally. Yeah, totally. I mean, and I think it's just, my opinion is the life of an actor is a lot easier than the life of a comedian.
Oh yeah.
Because a comedian, you have to travel around all the time. Yeah. You write your own act. You have there's all these details. And then as an actor, they're just like, hey, Bells, we need to come in Tuesday at 3:30 and say these words and wear these clothes. Hey, great. And you get to go home and sleep, be with your wife and family.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's no brainer.
You've seen the footage of when Hulk Hogan cracked his skull open, right?
No.
Oh God. Richard Belzer used to have a talk show,
Uh-huh.
and Hulk Hogan and Mr. T came on to promote like WrestleMania 4 or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And Belzer said something they didn't like asked if it was fake or something.
Yeah.
And so Hogan gets him in a sleeper hold, literally chokes him out cold, and then drops him on the concrete floor. And Belzer just hits his head, just splits open, right?
Holy moly.
Blood everywhere. So he jumps up and he's like, "We're going to commercial. We'll be right back." Like that's his first instinct. But he needed like a ton of stitches and like staples in his head and all this stuff.
Unbelievable.
So he sued them, and he used to call it his like his house in Tuscany fund. He bought a house in Tuscany with the money he got from them cracking his skull.
This is all. I mean, this is bigger news than the abandoned Simpsons house.
It really is. All but house related.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Very funny. No, I had no idea.
It's you can watch that on YouTube, and it's like kind of entertaining in how crazy it is. But man, I can't.
Boy, and hey, talk about a tough way to win bread. How about traveling professional wrestler?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like being a stand-up without the adulation.
Oh, dude. Andy, about 5 minutes in, I'm going to rub some barbed wire on your face.
Yeah. Take these steroids that'll completely destroy your body in 2 years.
Totally.
Yeah. Say what you want about stand-ups, but at least we generally avoid CTE.
True. Yeah. True.
Head injuries.
And when we fall on the ground, it's because we just got drunk and fell.
Yes, exactly.
God,
yeah.
Your head. God damn it.
It was by our own hand. Yes, indeed. So let's jump in. What are you going to do Saturday night at 8? There's a really weird ABC special on that would not fly now for a specific reason.
Okay.
I've never heard of. It's called Savinon Glover's New York, NU, New York. The choreographer of Bringin' Danois, Bringin' Da Funk takes center stage in an hour of dance and song set in various Big Apple locales. Guests include Stevie Wonder, who sings Ribbon in the Sky, and rapper Puff Daddy.
Okay. Saturday evening for me, Ken, I'm going with the Magnificent Seven movie.
Nice.
Reserving the right to check in on Savion Glover.
This
Commercial break.
This Magnificent Seven, I have to say, is not the original film.
Oh,
This is the pilot for a new Magnificent Seven series starring Michael Biehn.
in that case, I'm really in. Yeah.
Who else
This
is
is
in
next
this?
level.
Michael Biehn. Who else do we got in this? Kurtwood Smith.
I mean, the guy just doesn't stop working.
Yeah, he's the villain, obviously. Ron Perlman,
Oh, yeah. Hellboy.
who I've had on the show.
Incredible.
Yeah, very, very interesting, cantankerous man, but fascinating. I've never actually heard of this, and although writing it off at first, I'm semi-interested now.
Yeah.
I'm kind of indifferent on Michael Biehn, but like the Kurtwood Smith and Ron Perlman kind of intrigue me.
I'm intrigued. And then Savion Glover, just so that I'm remembering correctly, he was the tap dancer.
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
Because I saw him perform live with Stevie Wonder at the Staples Center.
Oh, wow.
And Stevie does this annual show called Stevie Wonder's House Full of Toys. And you go and you can bring a wrap toy and it'll go to, some kids' charity. He had special guests, like then they came out and did like 2 or 3 numbers. Savion did like a tap dancing number. Tony Bennett came out and he and Stevie did For Once in My Life.
Oh, wow.
With the harmonica and everything. So Stevie stayed on with everybody. And then they came out and did their thing. And then after that section, he played Intervisions and Speaking Book in their entirety.
It's like a 3-hour show.
It was like a 4-hour show.
Jeez.
And we got like 3 hours, and Stevie's behind the pan, and he's like, "Hey, everybody, I gotta pee. I gotta pee." And like somebody came out and took his arm and like walked him off stage, and they had a DJ that was just keeping the energy up. But
man, as much as
Savion Glover,
like that sounds amazing. But at the same time, I always stick in my mind how John Waters says no form of entertainment, he's specifically talking about comedies, should be more than 90 minutes. And I sometimes I'll be like, I don't know about that. And then I'll be sitting through like a 2-hour concert and be like, yeah, he's right. Even if it's a
totally.
bit really
Totally.
Like,
especially when you see those things, it's just like, look at this bill. And it's just like, and what you're not thinking about is the 26 minutes of changing of the stage between every act, and it kind of gets old.
Yeah, I prefer when musically, I usually prefer when they don't have an opener.
Right.
Because I hate that downtime in between. At stand-up, at least they it makes sense as an opener because they're like, let's get you going and hand you right off. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like,
right. Yeah. There's no set change. There's no nothing.
It's like, we get the energy going. Now everybody be quiet for 20 minutes. That's what we're going to do. Oh, and Comics Come Home 3 is on.
Hey now.
Janine Garofalo hosts with Anthony Clark. That's the least Comics Come Home lineup I think I've ever seen.
Yeah. Where are they coming home to?
It's Boston, technically.
Is it Boston?
Yeah, so that was...
I thought those both... I see both of them as Boston, or at least New England, right?
Yeah,
Am I crazy?
They both went to school here. It started here. But Comics Come Home is a Dennis Leary thing that he started with the Cam Neely Foundation. Oh. So we do it every year. He still does it. It's at the Boston Garden every year. But generally, it's Dennis Leary and Lenny Clark and Steve Sweeney. And, it's that crew of people. The Rescue Me crowd. So he did go to school with those people, but it's funny when it's that weird crossover.
Sure. I also think sometimes that, when you think about the how they make the sausage, agent will reach out, hey, let's get this person on your show. And there's all those, the parlay.
If you have this person on, I'll let you have this person for 10% less at this show and next year.
Yeah.
It's very strange. Sunday, what do you got? On the Family Channel? Yes. They have an ad here. It says, January's Jammin' with comedy on the Family Channel, which was used to be the Christian Broadcasting Network. The 700 Club was still on it at this time. This is the weirdest lineup. On Sunday afternoon, they're showing Raising Arizona at 3 p.m.
A classic.
Great movie that I would not think was on the Family Channel.
Yeah, agreed.
Followed by 16 Candles and then Caddyshack.
Wow. Oh my God.
What an odd package generally, but specifically for the Family Channel.
I totally agree. And then also that's if you typed in Chat GPT, 80s movies, and it was just burp. That is all of them on one night.
Then at 7, it's outside the purview, but Wonderful World of Disney has a made-for-TV movie starring Kevin Nealon and Zachary Ty Bryan from Home Improvement called Principal Takes a Holiday.
Oh, I'm watching it now. I'm gonna mail away for the DVD.
They give it 1 star.
Yeah.
When an accident befalls a school administrator, an unruly senior, big surprise, played by Zachary Ty Bryan, schemes to replace him with his own man, played by Kevin Nealon.
Yeah, remarkable. Kevin Nealon has one of my favorite lines I've ever heard any comedian say. We were backstage at the Dynasty typewriter, and he's about to go on. So he has his notebooks out and he's jotting things. And he said, I wish I wrote all the time like I do the 5 minutes before I go on stage.
Treat your whole life like the 5 minutes before you go on stage.
If you were just have that intensity, this is real now, just 2 hours a day or 1 hour a day. But it was just so funny. And as a comic yourself, you know exactly what he's talking about.
The Kevin Nealon joke in it was a Weekend Update joke, so I'm sure he didn't write it, but the one that I always remember, and if I was hard pressed to say something Kevin Nealon did, it would be this one. It was the story. He goes, there was a recall on condoms because somebody had put itching powder in these batch of condoms, and his joke was, all this time I thought I was allergic to cats. Which is so gross.
Yeah, he's a great comic. Also, he was the bartender at the Improv for years.
Yes, and is from Connecticut originally.
Yeah, a dork guy.
Which is very funny. Then there's a weird show that they're putting, because we're in mid-season replacement time in January, and Fox has a sneak preview of a show called Ask Harriet, which is sort of like Tootsie, and it's this guy who needs a job at a newspaper. He's a sports writer, so he pretends to be this woman Harriet to have an advice column, and the ad is so awful. It's this legs, like a graduate style legs, and then with a hairy hand with a cigar, and it says, what would it take to get an all-American guy into a dress? A lot less than you think. Ask Harriet. Sneak preview. That just sounds like the worst show.
I was intrigued. And again, this is kind of reminiscent of what we were talking about earlier. Something that you know was real, but you have no memory of it at all.
No.
Like, man, they shut us down while we were shooting the second episode. Like, I get it. I understand.
This is Anthony Tyler Quinn plays an arrogant, chauvinistic sports writer who in the opener is fired by his New York newspaper and rebounds by being rehired as their advice to the lovelorn columnist Sylvia Coco.
Right.
That is not a premise.
Oh, dude.
Can sustain a series.
Agreed. I mean, Bosom Buddies was one thing, but it feels like it's
Bosom Buddies coasted on the charisma of the cast exclusively after like episode 3.
right. Yeah, it's a good cast, but it's a pretty premise.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, all those obviously, you couldn't make that now, but you really couldn't make that now because people don't give a shit.
Right.
Like it's a good reason.
Yeah, they're progressive. They're like, yeah, hey, we transitioned, became a woman. He started to live the life that she wants to now. It's like, good for her.
So many 70s, 80s, 90s shows and premises were like, I had to pretend to be gay to get cheap rent. Or like, I had to pretend to be a woman so I could get this job. Like, really?
Yeah, I was in the crew of a movie called Sorority Boys.
Yes, with one of the Corys, right?
No. The cast was, the three leads were Barry Watson from Seventh Heaven, Michael Rosenbaum, who was Lex Luthor in Smallville, and Harlan Williams.
Oh.
And so the three of them dressed like women to live in a sorority house because there was no room at the inn.
All three
for the
very
frat
convincing
houses.
women.
Very convincing women. So, it was Wally Wolodarski, who was an old Simpsons writer, was the director. And I was just in the sound department.
It's funny. I wonder, that's nobody's favorite genre of comedy. Like, there's no one who's like, I got to write the definitive book on pretending to be the another gender of comedy. the complete guide.
Also, Ken, if you came up to me wearing a dress and a wig, I would say, Ken, what are you wearing the dress and the wig for?
Right.
And then,
so
to have us all set that aside for a long, long time.
Yeah. Like, Matt's wearing glasses now, everybody. I'm not like, hey, I had this was supposed to be with Matt. Who the hell are you?
What's Clark Kent doing here?
The Superman thing.
Hilarious.
As a comic book guy, they did, DC did this thing called the Crisis on Infinite Earths in the early 80s where they tried to reboot their whole universe and make stuff more realistic. And they tried to explain the Superman thing. And the explanation is more ridiculous than just people are dumb, where they said, because he is such muscle control over his whole body.
Sure.
I forget. It's when he's Superman, I think. He discreetly vibrates the muscles in his face. So nobody ever gets a good look at him. He's always kind of a blur.
Wow.
And that's how he gets away with it, is the description. And I was like, I really didn't care enough. I'm offended that you came up with that explanation.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's so funny. They're like, we stayed up all night, guys, but it was worth it.
We got it. That one guy.
We're going with vibrating face.
Yeah. They had to come up with this super weird way to describe how he shaves.
Yeah. Yeah.
which is very involved and incorporates his heat vision. Yeah,
dude.
Who cares? I don't care.
There's also once things become a much larger property, they want more stuff. They want the extra stories. I've had that experience a lot of times with these 10 episode streamers where it's just like, well, it's a 10-hour movie, and then there's 4 hours of the movie that you could have cut out, and it would have been.
It was
so there more stuff isn't better.
This was a 2-hour movie you made into a 7-hour series.
That's right. Yeah. And left this lingering question mark, what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
We'll let you know in 3 years.
It is funny how the nature of storytelling, like a television series and a movie are the antithesis of each other, in that the movie is mostly a plot. Like
Right.
that's what's the driving force that it has a beginning, middle, and end.
Agreed.
And a
Totally.
TV series, for the most part, even stuff that's serialized, stuff kind of never changes. That's how you keep it going. So you have
Right.
some serialized thing that you have to tease people with, but like the translation is almost impossible, which is why those like TV series based on movies
Mm-hmm.
are, I think maybe 1 in 30 works.
I couldn't agree more.
It's like,
Cosine infinity.
this is terrible.
That's when I think about like when I'm, sitting to write something. There have been times in the past where I'd write these pilots and you have like a story Bible and characters and like, hey, here's the next like 5 episodes. At this point in my life, I only want to write and direct movies.
Yeah.
That is that 90 minutes that has that story and just like, well, that was, when we watched it at home while we were having dinner and we enjoyed it, and but I don't know how things get made where they're doing 30, 40, 50 episodes.
It's you never know. Or, I've talked to showrunners who had, big shows that I really enjoyed that were like the network basically made us have this serialized B plot that doesn't make any sense. They're like, it's because, and I have to shoehorn it in here. And, or you end up like with Doctor Who, which I enjoyed the newer series, but you have to do world ending stakes every season.
Right.
For your season arc, and then it's like, and then start over again, and it's like, you kind of saved the world and rebuilt it like 7 times. Like we don't care anymore. Like there's no actual stakes here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. It's like sometimes less is more.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. Monday, what'd you do?
Well, Monday, I'm coming in hot with the National Geographic Lions of the African Night.
Okay.
And this was kind of based on the conversation we had. Maybe not the show you would have watched at the time, but it's the show you would watch now. Because
you a big nature guy?
I love nature and animals. And also the only other option was Cosby. And I think I'm gonna watch that.
You don't want to watch.
I
would watch Cosby and a lion.
Right. Yeah.
That would be good TV.
That's that's a Netflix streamer.
Have you ever met or been around a lion in person?
That is a great question. I've never worked with a lion before, but there's a wild animal rescue in Keensburg, Colorado. And they have a terrain that resembles the Serengeti. So they have a lot of like actual lions, prides out there, tigers, bears, oh my. And a lot of these different rescue lions from circuses and private owners, but they just let them wander out. And then there's this sidewalk that you just are probably like 200 feet above them and you can just walk out for a mile and just look at them. So it's really a remarkable cause and something to see. I would have to say that's the closest I've ever been, because sometimes you're on the sidewalk and they're in the sun, like laying on, in the shade of the sidewalk.
They are so much like they act just like small cats, which is so nuts. Right. But whenever I've been near a real lion and it roars, you are not prepared for what that actually sounds like. Right. Like it is not like hearing a recording of it. You're like, what the fuck? Like it's this crazy sound. Like I've never did like it. Like, and I've only encountered that at zoos, but I was just like, oh my God. Like you get this like just physical reaction to it.
I bet it's probably like bassy and maybe kind of warm.
Yeah, it's like, it's one of those things where a recording does not do it justice at all.
Amazing.
And then I think she still has it. Tippi Hedren famously has that big cat rescue in Malibu, right? I think.
Yeah, good call.
Which she's not. I think it's
probably
for.
Yeah, there's probably like a bunch of people involved in it, but I thought she had passed away recently.
Maybe she did. No, you're probably right.
Maybe within this year.
I remember I had Donovan Scott on, and he's in Sheena, the Tanya Roberts movie.
Great.
And I guess all the big cats they used were from Tippi Hedren's rescue.
Wow.
But like none of those things were trained or tame. They were like, it's fine, we got over Tippi Hedren's, and he's like, this thing is not cool. Not cool, everybody. I'm drawn to Jim Henson's Storyteller is on HBO.
Hey now. Uh-huh. I love it.
And it's such a good show. That was part of the Jim Henson Hour from 1990. It was like right before he died. And it was like a 10 episode, shot on film, serious little half-hour retellings of fairy tales. And I don't know why they're not more well known, because they're so well done.
Interesting.
And really great. There's one that's this old Russian folktale about these devils that play cards. That's like super creepy and great.
Wow, cool.
That's one of my favorite things he did. And it just like, for some, maybe just because it was towards the end of his career, people don't. Disney certainly isn't proud of it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, maybe people just remember you for the hits, and then you have other offerings and they're like, yeah, but it's not the Muppet Show. You're like, well, if this was my only show, you'd probably think it was pretty great.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I recommend it to everybody. Then what'd you do after that hour of Lions?
Well, after the Lions, I'm staying with Mysteries of the Millennium on TLC.
Because people were scared about the upcoming millennium.
The millennium, I spent Y2K in Prim, Nevada, just in case it all went sideways.
Did you really?
Yeah, I really did. I had a girlfriend at the time. I was just like, let's go out here and, So literally we were kind of sitting in a pool deck chair at a casino. There's nobody else out there. And it was just like, it's midnight, and
the planes didn't fall out of the sky.
No, everything seemed to be fine. Yeah,
I was at a Astroman show. If you're familiar with them, they're a sci-fi surf rock band that wears space helmets at the Middle East downstairs, and they counted down. And Middle East downstairs is like a basement, so I was pretty sure Y2K wasn't an issue, but I will say when we came up from underground at like 1 a.m, I was like 10% expecting like cars on fire and stuff. But it was fun.
They were on fire, but just for the normal reasons.
Yeah, it was normal Cambridge stuff. Yeah. It was regular fire.
Because Manchester lost.
Yes. My dad was big on Y2K. Like, he couldn't believe I didn't have a go bag.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, he was convinced that
interesting.
That shit was.
And I guess from what I hear, like, they did take steps to prevent it from being a big catastrophe. That could be true. That could just be like Monday morning quarterback. Yeah, we did it, guys. Yeah,
Although the more I learn about history, which I should stop doing, the more I realize that the veneer of normalcy and society is always like teetering on the edge of complete ruin, and the fact that it hasn't happened has been like a million instances of just like good luck chance.
I agree.
There's a ton of things that you find out later. It was like, that almost didn't go that way.
Right. It could have gone another direction. It would have changed the course of history.
There's a show here I never heard of before, but I'm kind of intrigued. And it's a debut. This is a mid-season show called Style and Substance. And it has Gene Smart, who I've literally never seen do anything I didn't enjoy.
Interesting. Wow, that's great.
And Nancy McKeon. And it's Gene Smart's basically playing Martha Stewart. And Nancy McKeon's playing like her first in command of her show. That's like the real brains behind the show. And Gene Smart's kind of like a monster. It sounds like a fun show. It definitely didn't last very long, but it looks fun.
Well, you don't think about Nancy McKeon and like her post facts of life, thing. Maybe she showed up in a few things here and there. I think a lot of times in the same way that like the Jim Henson thing, they're like, well, it's not facts of life. It's this. And you're like, well, it's still good work I'm proud of, but
this was her return to comedy, because she had done that thing where it was like, after my comedy sitcom thing, I'm going to do work that's the complete opposite. So for years she was in those like ripped from the headlines, horrific, I stole someone's baby, murdered my husband, Lifetime type movies. And then this was like, she's back with comedy, but then people were like, no.
Right.
It's not Poison Ivy.
That's oh man, that's just like the catchphrase of show business.
Yeah.
And then people were like, no.
We don't.
People said no.
We don't care for that.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest post facts of life career, not counting George Clooney.
Sure.
Is gotta be Kim Fields.
She's, Cloris Leachman.
Well, yeah, Cloris Leachman.
But as far as like Edna Garrett.
Yeah.
She's
she had
not A Different World.
Living Single.
Thank you, Living Single, and
She pops up and stuff all the time now. Yeah, she seems to be.
she's out there. There's also, I think, something about having a career where you get to a certain age where the new batch of creatives were fans of your work from like, I love Facts of Life, come be in this,
I can't believe we got you.
Yeah, exactly. So it gets to be something of a renaissance for you and a fun connection with the next generation.
It is always weird when we realize we're way older than we thought we were, because someone who we consider like our age or seem like a young comedian, you'll see like a new sitcom where it's like, he's playing a grandpa.
Right.
And some like 25-year-old kids running a show.
Right.
It's like, no, what?
Yeah,
That's not
exactly.
possible.
Exactly.
Oh,
That's
my God.
just, I always say you don't really get older. You just move into a different category.
That makes sense.
You're the deputy, then you become the sheriff, then you become the chief. It's just, judge,
Did you ever see House
Congressman.
2?
I don't know that I did.
It's a fun sequel to the original House. It's kind of a fantasy horror film. Has one of the best taglines of any movie I've ever seen, where it's House 2, the second story.
Yeah, great. Fantastic.
It's got Royal Dano in it, who's like an old cowboy actor. You've seen him in a ton of things. You'd recognize him.
Sure.
He's deceased now, but he was, I don't know, this movie's from 87, I think. Bill Maher's in it as well.
Oh, wow.
But Royal Dano's probably 80-something years old. And
Cool.
this guy, Ari Gross, who's in the movie, was like talking to him, and he's like, wow,
Ari Gross, classic.
it was amazing. Was like, this is great. It's so cool to work with you. You've been working in, because this guy'd been working in cowboy movies since like the silent days, right?
Incredible.
And he goes,
Sergio Leone,
yeah.
cool.
He goes, well, there's only two of us, and one of us is either working, dead, or sick. So this time I get the gig. And it was like, I mean, he's
so
right.
true. That's so hilarious
That's
and
the
so true.
category.
Because I think they'll always need the grandfather and the thing, whatever.
Who's the current Wilford Brimley?
Oh, that's a good question.
I always think of that, like, who's Ed Asner? Who's Wilford Brimley?
If it says anything about the industry, I can't name anyone.
Nick Offerman, maybe?
Maybe.
But even
But
that,
he's too like young, and he's too alternative.
Yeah.
When you think about his persona that he hit with on Parks and Rec, it's
ironic. It's not.
It's ironic.
Yeah.
It's not really kind of like sage and cranky.
He doesn't have sincerities.
Right. Exactly. Well, and even though like Wilford Brimley, remember he's like talking to Kramer about the mail? Well,
Yes.
It means a hell of a lot to me. It's fantastic. It's so funny.
My two favorite Wilford Brimley stories, and if listeners at home are playing TV Guidance Counselor Bingo, you're probably going to get 2 squares here.
Okay.
Is one, in John Carpenter's The Thing, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Sure.
There's a scene where Wilford Brimley is the Thing.
Yeah.
And he's grabbing this guy's face and like killing him. And he's got this stony, like intense look on his face. And I saw this interview with Wilford Brimley, and the guy was like, what did you do for prepare? Like, what acting, what memory, like, what were you thinking about? And he goes, picking up my laundry. And he was like deadly serious. So every time I see that, that's what I picture.
Yeah, because it was so blank. It was so routine.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the second thing was, he was in a firing squad to the day he died. Whatever state he was from, like Wyoming or somewhere like that, they still did death by firing squad.
Oh my God.
And they had these guys that were like on-call guys. Because the way they do it is they get like 10 guys. Only one of them has a live bullet, but nobody knows who has the live bullet, so you don't know if you killed the guy or not. And Brimley was one of the guys. He participated in a bunch of state
What state was this in?
I think it's Wyoming. It's somewhere.
That's just
like
remarkable.
that. This was like till fairly recently. Like before he died, he was still doing it.
Boy.
Who volunteers for that?
That's
That's just weird.
well. I can back out if I get an acting job, right? Oh, sure, Wilfred. Okay, I'm in.
I booked a Murder, She Wrote. Gonna get Stacey Keach. Keach is still on that coke. That coke.
Oh
thing.
yeah.
He can't. Have a gun.
That is so unique and such hilarious information to learn.
So weird. Tuesday, what are you going with?
Tuesday, I'm a cutter at heart. 8 to 10, going straight, breaking away.
Yeah. This is the movie, not the TV series based on the movie, which was very short-lived. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I don't know. I don't know that. If it didn't have Paul Dooley, I'm not interested.
No Paul Dooley. Speaking of 60
Okay,
Candles.
yeah, then that's just tells you everything you need.
No
to know.
Chris Makepeace. Is it Chris Makepeace in Breaking Away?
I don't know. Is he the lead?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. He had that little, it was like Meatballs, Breaking Away, and something else in like a 3-year period.
Right.
So you're watching that all night. This is actually a pretty good night for TV. There's some weird stuff on. So Breaking Away, first of all, TV Guide gives it 4 stars.
Wow.
Pretty impressive. They rarely give movies 4 stars.
Yeah. It's a tough audience.
I'll give you a comparison. On at the same time as Mrs. Doubtfire, 3 stars.
Huh.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer, 2 stars.
2 stars.
Day of the Animals, the 1977 film starring Christopher George, where animals go nuts and kill everybody. 2 stars.
Yeah. I'm sure it's only 2 because that sounds pretty good.
The 1990 Nicolas Cage, Tommy Lee Jones pilots wage war on drugs movie Firebirds. 1 star.
1 star. Wow.
Those were your choices at that time. Gene Hackman in The Conversation, 4 stars.
Yeah, that's up there.
I'd give that to it. But Soul Man is on, which is not a good show.
Sure. Oh, is that the C. Thomas Howell spinoff?
Oh no, yes, there's the Soul Man, the sitcom. No, this was Dan Aykroyd as a motorcycle riding priest.
Oh, gotcha.
With Anthony Clark, and in this episode, playing Dan Aykroyd's absentee dad, Ed Asner.
Wow. Hey, we did it.
Casting.
It's come full circle.
Yeah, that's pretty great. So
we're through the Looking Glass, people.
It's all coming together. I definitely watch that. News Radio's on at 8:30, which is
I
so
love
good.
News Radio.
Spin
Phil
City.
Hartman and
Good. So good. And then a show I love and don't talk about enough that I watched every Tuesday night on our New Hampshire Public Television. I had to unplug my cable and get the antenna out to get New Hampshire Public Television to watch this.
Fantastic.
Red Dwarf, the
Red Dwarf.
UK sci-fi comedy series.
Wow. I don't know anything about it.
It's pretty funny. It's 1987. Basically, this guy is like a screw up in a spaceship. He gets put in cryogenic frozen for a punishing for something, and they kind of forget about him, and thousands of years go by, and everybody on the ship is dead when he finally comes out of and so the crew is him. He's a real person. The computer that runs the ship, his cat is the descendant of his cat, which has become a humanoid person who's like Morris Day. And then a hologram of a guy who used to be on the ship with him, who was like a huge asshole.
What a premise.
It's really funny. It's a live action show. They did about 10 series of it, I think. And it was a contemporary British comedy show, which we didn't generally get very often. And I was like, I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah. You can't really say that very often.
No.
You know?
They did a US pilot and it was terrible.
Yeah. Well.
Real bad. Didn't work.
That's one thing about the streamers that we're living in now. They don't really do a lot of pilots. They just kind of like, we'll make 10 and see what happens.
And they don't do a lot of remakes of foreign series because they're like, just dub it. Because people are okay with that now.
Yeah. True.
Which I'm happy about. I'd rather watch the original one with subtitles or whatever. Because very few US remakes have been good of foreign shows. Like even there was a great Dutch show that Lars von Trier did called The Kingdom. And it was about kind of like a haunted hospital. This was like in the mid 90s. It was like very lynchy, weird thing.
It's a great premise.
It's a really fun premise. The original series was great. The remake in the US they got Stephen King to showrun.
Wow.
And it was not good.
Oh, wow.
It just didn't work. It was for whatever weird reason.
Yeah. Sometimes you're like shooting something and you feel like, oh, I'm really, setting this like taut thriller or, mystery or something like that. And then you get it in the editing bay and it just kind of falls flat and you can't quite put your finger on it. You got all the ingredients.
Yeah. Everything individually worked great. Yeah. And then it just doesn't stitch together for whatever reason.
Yeah. The souffle collapses.
Yeah. Although the longer I've been doing the show and the longer I've known people who work in the industry and have like been on the outskirts of it myself, the more I realize the fact that we get anything good, especially on television, is a complete fluke. Like it has to go through like 45. It's like hitting all the lights. Like you get the green lights at like every single intersection for like 10 miles.
Oh yeah.
It almost never happens.
Almost never happens.
And it's like, that's the only way, because there's so many roadblocks for stuff to be any good.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. A lot of people have opinions, and those people are powerful.
Yeah.
So they get their hand in there and like, hey, buddy, I'll take it from here. It's just like, you know what? Let's just let Vince Gilligan do it.
Right. He knows what he's doing.
You just kind of here, just keep sending the checks. Here's the routing number, and we'll get back to you.
Do you know Brian Finkelstein? He's a writer, like improv guy.
No.
He wrote this.
I was thinking of Brian Dunkelman.
No, not Dunkelman. Finkelstein wrote this amazing one-man show that was at Aspen in 2006 that he worked at a suicide hotline. Mm-hmm. And it was this great, like, funny, sort of heartbreaking, bittersweet, great one-man show about this. So
awesome.
Comedy Central optioned it from him to make a series. You know, whatever, people working at a suicide hotline. So he's working on this show for a while, and then Comedy Central calls him in one day, and they're like, what do you think about a dog?
Yeah.
And he's like, what are you talking about? And they're like, yeah, we think maybe like there's a dog working at the hotline. He's like, yeah, I guess they could have that. He goes, no, like the dog talks, like he answers the calls. And he was just like, if you wanted to make a show about a talking dog, like, why didn't you just do it instead of like taking my shit? Like what? And it was all kinds of stuff like that where I'm like, yeah, that's just bizarre.
Yeah, that's not bizarre. And that's not like, I don't want him to do that.
Yeah.
Does that matter? That like, I don't want to, you know?
I had talked to John Cleese. I got to spend a day with John Cleese, and
remarkable.
And this was, within the last few years, he was saying him and his writing partner had got something set up with Disney that they were writing. Mm-hmm. And John Cleese goes, I don't take notes. He's like, if they give me notes, I'm like, no. Right. And he's John Cleese. You would think like if someone could do that, it's him.
Right.
But he goes, I went in there with my writing partner, and they're like, you didn't take any of the notes that we gave you. And he goes, yeah, why would I do that? Mm-hmm. And they're like, what are you talking about? And he goes, and I said to them, you hired me to write something funny and good. And the notes you gave me would make that not funny and not good. So why would I do that? And they were like, you're fired. They're just like, even him, they're like, but he was like, that's fine. I wasn't going to do it.
I was not expecting you're fired.
Yeah.
What a hilarious way to end the story.
Yeah, like even him. He's like, I'm not doing that. They're like, all right.
Yeah, one of my favorite Hollywood sayings, it's like, I'll probably butcher it, but like, it's a shit sandwich. And the more bread you have, the less shit you taste.
Yeah.
When everyone's eating this shit sandwich on Sunday. My thing that always makes me laugh is that most people are like, what the hell? Hey, what's my, they feel like they're lacking their being given their due in some way.
Yeah.
And the example of that not made me laugh. That's not the right term, but like, when I was like, yep. George Clooney and Brad Pitt had their movie, the Wolves.
Yep.
And they're like, yeah, I was just going to stream it. You're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to put it in the theaters. And,
if they can't get it in theaters.
Dude, those two guys.
Yeah.
They're like, we're just going to write to a streamer. Like, what hope is there for mere mortals?
Yeah. You're like, if anyone could, like, those guys should be able to just, like, in not even that long ago, like a guy in Clooney's position could like call the head of a studio and be like, I want to make a movie about horny dolphins or something. And they'd be like, cool, here's a budget. Like, they'd be like, we got a release date. Awesome.
Totally. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
It's those venture capitalist guys. They ruin everything.
There's that.
Wednesday, what'd you do?
So Wednesday, I did the classic 4 different half-hour sitcoms. Nice. It was a 2-hour block. So 8 o'clock, Spin City.
Great show, great cast. Speaking of Richard Kind.
Yeah, Richard Kind. And there's actually, I watched Bill Lawrence's Maestro class. I rented it and watched the whole thing. I loved it. I thought it was great.
He's great.
But he talks about this moment where like he grew up as a fan of, Michael J. Fox on Family Ties.
Yeah.
And like him writing lines and like being on set and seeing Michael J. Fox like say his lines and like it going well and getting laughs and stuff. And like someone tapped him on the shoulder after his first take, like, "Well, Bill, what'd you think?" And he's just like, "What?" It was, yeah,
Yeah.
he was in stunned shock and silence and disbelief.
Yeah.
So it's a fun story to hear him tell about that show. So
And it's such a great show. Like that, one of the few sitcoms in the 80s and 90s that actually shot in New York. A lot of the stuff. And just the ensemble cast is amazing.
Right.
Barry Bostwick's so fun. Like, it's just great. It's a great show.
Agreed. Unique premise, you know, and then the number one on the call sheet was the funniest part of the show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And yeah, I love that show.
So I did that. And then I go 8:30 Murphy Brown.
Great show.
I'm down for a Murphy Brown.
Great show. I cannot watch and enjoy now through no fault of their own.
Sure.
Only because it was so topical. I have no idea what's happening when I try to watch an old episode.
Understood. Yeah. Didn't was more in the moment, huh?
I need to do the reading. Like, I'm like,
Right.
I have to, because there'll be references and I'm like, I know that's a joke from like the cadence and the way it is, but like, I wish which is a shame because it was a great show. I didn't watch the reboot, but I heard it wasn't bad.
Right. I didn't watch the reboot either.
I love Candice Bergen. She's pretty much great in everything I ever see her.
Yeah, yeah. And her dad is, you know,
Edgar Bergen.
Edgar Bergen.
The world's most famous radio ventriloquist.
That's right.
Which is true.
A radio ventriloquist.
Yep.
It's perfect.
Did you ever see the movie Starting Over with Burt Reynolds and Candice Bergen?
No.
Great movie, 1978, I think. They get a divorce and they actually shot it in Boston. And Burt Reynolds is like this like sad divorced guy, and it's really funny. And they're both great in it. It's a very good show.
I'll check it out. Yeah.
You passed up Working, the show that starred Fred Savage. This is the first season that Dana Gould was on. And Arden Marine. This is the first thing Arden Marine did.
Wow.
She got cast right out of basically moving from Rhode Island to New York, and like immediately got cast in Working.
Wow. Hey, good for her. Remarkable.
Season 2, they did fire Dana and recast.
I don't remember that the show working that much.
It wasn't huge. It was the first post Wonder Years thing Fred Savage did. And so it was one of those things where they're like, he's an adult, this is the show, you know. They really were trying to like so it was an office sitcom. It's okay, you know. They reworked so much of it for the second season. I think it was one of those things that they were like, again, it was some executive was like, I love this. We're going to make this work.
Sure.
And so it lasted probably longer than other shows of its ilk would have. But, you know, there's some good stuff, but it doesn't quite gel.
Understood. Yeah. I had the good fortune of working with Fred on a Realtor commercial. He was like the director. Did I tell you this story before?
No. Yeah, he directs a ton now.
It's in my book. But basically the short version of the story is we had this bit where like the realtor comes in with the family. They're looking at a house. They flip on the light switch and the wire singes and the chandelier crashes and breaks the glass coffee table. You know, like it was like a shocking moment. So we did it one time and it broke, and like I thought that was going to be it for the day. But they're like, hey, let's reset. So we did it like 3 times and just kept breaking the glass coffee table. And then like before the 4th time, he comes over and says like, hey guys, cover your mics. Like, okay. So we like, you know, so people at Video Village can't hear. And he's like, I got the take I'm going to use, the first one, but I just wanted to break all the glass.
Why not? You're the director. You might as well.
Yeah. He's just like, you know, the lesson is ask what you want, and if they give it to you, use it. Break all the glass.
Yeah. Especially if you get it first take, you're like, now we can have fun.
Oh, dude, totally.
Because you got to do at least the second one for, you know, insurance. But then after that, like, you don't want to go like everyone go home early for the day.
Totally. And he was such a nice guy, such a positive spirit. So
that's tough to do when you're on a set, especially in like a commercial or something.
Yeah, there was a lot of like location moves too, because they have these different places that they have to be. So those can be involved, especially if you're getting a lot of trucks and gear. You know,
it reminds me, I don't know what, you know, the actor Kurt Fuller,
Kurt
He's
Fuller.
been in a ton of stuff. He's in Wayne's World. He always plays kind of like a corporate jerk, but he's really good at it. He's on Evil now. I remember him telling a story where the first gig he got was in Elvira's movie.
Cool.
And he's playing a real estate agent, and he was a real estate agent at that time. So he goes, I remember someone at the real estate agency told me to make a room feel bigger, just walk along the edges. So in this scene, he's basically like against the wall, like not going into the room. And it's really funny.
Wow.
And it's like, that's such a funny, weird thing that like a guy actually told you to do.
Remarkable. So specific, but it really makes sense, you know?
Which would, most people wouldn't have thought of. Then are you doing Drew Carey, or are you a Third Rock guy?
I did Third Rock. And again, I can't say I watched it that much, but maybe that's why I would go back and watch it now.
Jan Hooks is in this one.
Oh, hey now.
Yeah. Who's, again, so underrated. She was so good.
There's no basement in the Alamo.
Maze. Can you say Adobe? Drew Carey I loved. Speaking of Bill Lawrence, his wife Krista Miller was in it.
Sure.
That show really worked for me because Drew Carey never once pretended he could act. He is totally not there in scenes in and it works because he knows it. Like, unlike Seinfeld, who's a terrible actor, is not able to, like, he just stands out. It's him, but he's clearly fighting against it. Like, I think Seinfeld thinks he's probably really good at acting.
Yeah.
Drew Carey's just like, I'm just me, whatever. I'm just kind of here. I don't do this, and it works. Like, it totally works on that show.
Right. Just give me the funny things to say. And
I'll look at the camera, whatever, like, people aren't here for me to do like a touching moment.
True. Yeah. He knows his fans. And
then are you doing Ellen?
And then what did I have? Oh, 9:30. There's a Seinfeld, right?
Yes. Yep.
So I'm going Seinfeld. My favorite live action sitcom of all time.
Do you rewatch it at all? Have you revisited it?
During the pandemic, we rewatched all of them on Netflix again. And I can still, like, if I'm like channel surfing and I see like something else, I'll stay and watch for a little bit. The look of the clothes and the timing and the period and all that, whatever. But the comedy is very, very timeless.
I loved it when it was on. Loved it.
Yeah.
And I have difficulty rewatching it only because one of the things that made it great to me was the surprise, like the plot surprises and the twists were just
sure.
And so knowing them, it's just not as, for whatever weird reason, like, it's hard for me to enjoy that, which is the opposite of normally how it works. Like in a show I love, like I watch Newhart over and over and over again.
Oh yeah.
But my brain's also broken.
Well, there is that surprise that you laugh because you don't know what to expect. And sometimes when you do, the thrill is gone, so to speak.
Yeah.
I get it, for sure.
Might just be me. Thursday night, what are you doing?
Thursday night, I thought this was a rerun because it said The Simpsons and then Ask Harriet.
Yes.
Is that Thursday night?
That's Thursday night. It's a special Simpsons.
Uh-huh.
This is a repeat. This is when Flanders is coaching the Pee Wee football team. The reason this is mostly repeats is because figure skating is on.
Oh, it's tough to compete.
It was huge, like from the Winter Olympics in '94, through to like '98, like. Ice skating got huge on TV for some reason. So I think they were like, we're not going to bother. And this is the men's long program from the U.S. Championships in Philadelphia.
Wow.
I mean, this determines who makes it to the Olympics.
Wow. Hey, yeah. I wouldn't want to send out my starting lineup against skaters like that.
And it was live. That's the other thing too.
Sure.
Which I think there were some small percentage of people watching live figure skating hoping someone would get injured. Because why else would you bother to make it live?
True.
There's definitely a bunch of dudes being like, all right, they got blades on their feet. It's slippery. Anything can happen.
Hilarious. So yeah, I guess then that was legit and correct. I did The Simpsons and then I did Ask Harriet. I didn't, we had already talked about it. Such an incredibly
And this
Done
guy,
premise.
this is in this ad, it's like the full frontal of his face, and he is not remotely convincing as a woman. Like, he's got Schwarzenegger jaw. Like, he's a big, like, square-jawed, buff guy.
Right.
A hunk, if you will.
Agreed. A hunk, dare we say? A hunk. Hilarious. Totally. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And so, like, that, clearly they did that being like, it's extra funny.
Yeah.
Because he's such a man.
You could see his genitals through his dress.
Oh my God. Yeah, what a
It's
terrible. I remember this show came up before in an episode, and I think we looked, and I believe they canceled it after like 2 episodes, and like 6 episodes never aired. Like, they didn't even bother.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the thing with like the first minute of the show, the executives are like, I've made a mistake.
Yeah.
I didn't look at what I signed. I said okay to a thing. I was distracted. I was going through a divorce.
Dude. Yeah. You just sit and watch it with your family and like, what do you think, guys? Oh, Dad, it's no good. Oh, no.
Yeah. This is bad. We need to have an intervention about your career. Oh my. So then
hilarious.
Are you doing anything at 9?
So I had, and then Seinfeld, doing the Seinfeld, and then may as well just close it out with Nova.
Oh,
at 9:30.
This is
feels like the perfect thing to fall asleep on the couch. About 9:40.
Alan Alda's dulcet tones will lull you to sleep at that point. This episode is the B-29 Frozen in Time. Follows the efforts to retrieve a bomber that was lost in the Arctic Circle in 1947.
Yeah.
That's a good horror movie premise. That's basically the thing.
I'm in.
When I used to work for a subsidiary of Scholastic in Watertown, Mass, the same building, the production company that made Nova was in there. And at one point I urinated next to Alan Alda.
Wow.
he was in there doing his voiceover because he'd come in for like 3 days and do like the whole season.
Oh, of course.
And,
those gigs, man.
That's a sweet gig. They do a lot of that and also missed Sinbad's Nothing But Funk on HBO too.
Sinbad. Yeah. He was really a really groundbreaking comic.
Yeah. And he was everywhere. Like, his level of fame was impressive.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember the name of the other comedian, but he was talking about opening for Sinbad. And like, they went out to like a store that afternoon and bought some socks. And he goes and he's like watching Sinbad on stage after he goes on, and he's talking about like socks, and he's killing. He's just crushing. And he's just like, we just did that today.
Yeah.
And he's just improvising and just blowing the roof off the place.
If I'm remembering correctly, he was one of those guys that was like a longtime host MC at like the Apollo.
Probably.
Which is just like, that's boot camp, like Navy SEAL level, like stand up. Like, if you survive doing that for a week, never mind years, like, you're going to go on stage and talk about anything and be able to make it work.
Agreed. It's like kind of a George Wallace has that element too.
Yeah.
He had that Flamingo show residency, and just like, it's 6:30. You go on, get out there.
I made this work. And George Wallace was in the Dom DeLuise show in 1987.
Wow.
This show was insane. It was the premise of the show was it was a sitcom talk show variety show. So the sitcom was George Wallace and Dom DeLuise are barbers. And they have guests come in and they cut their hair while they interview them. So like Burt Reynolds, like that's that part. But then like Boogaloo Shrimp, the breakdancer, will come on and do a segment. Then there'll be a sketch. It's absolutely bonkers. And people did not like it, but it is such a weird like experiment. Yeah.
Well, I'm compiling the list of things to research.
There is a chimpanzee.
Yeah. Oh, man.
In every episode. Yeah. if that sways you.
I'm in.
Friday night, final night of the week. What are you doing?
Okay. Friday night, for reasons we discussed earlier, going with Mike Hammer.
Yeah.
Yeah. The classic.
I love Mike Hammer. I was a huge fan of the Mickey Spillane novels.
Oh, yeah.
Kiss Me Deadly is one of my favorite movies, speaking of Cloris Leachman.
Mm-hmm.
And I was skeptical of Stacey Keach because I always thought like 50s hard-boiled, and Stacey Keach is like is a real 70s looking guy.
Right. Yeah. I understand that.
But he's great. That show and the movies are really good.
Agreed. Also, I do like when something is serialized, they have these standalone things.
Yes.
It's like a new case, a new thing. Where it's just like, hey, at the end of this hour, I commit.
Yeah, it's a new book. There's
going to be some closure.
And the Mickey Spillane, who was like a real asshole, but like he was exactly like you thought he would be, a guy who wrote all those books.
Sure.
He hated the 50s My Camera TV series, the movies. He was like, nobody played Hammer right. So he played Hammer himself in a movie called The Girl Hunters.
Oh my goodness.
And it's not the best movie, but is so entertaining to watch because he is not an actor.
Right.
And it's a decent plot line because he was a decent writer for those kinds of things. But
sure. And I think being a writer, you have the imagination that you have to use.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you can kind of see halfway through when he realizes he was a little too cocky. Like he's kind of like, oh yeah, maybe I couldn't really play him. This is
dude,
it's like a real someone called his bluff, and then he's like, oh no.
I'll tell you, everyone thinks acting is easy until they do it.
Yeah,
and then you're like, hey, remember these 3 consecutive sentences. And they're like, well, do I move my hands like this when I talk?
Yeah.
You can't.
I never thought about how I walk before.
How do I walk? How do I feel about this pumpkin?
Well, it's like Stephen King, who, again, like when he directed Maximum Overdrive, like granted he was coked out of his mind, but he was like, I saw them make all these movies of my work. I'm like, I can do this. And he's like, no, I can't. Like, that is not as easy as I thought it would be. That did not work.
Not at all. Even on something that's not a very ambitious thing, you have this, it's going to be a 21-day shoot.
I wrote it. I know how it works. I'm the one who could. And it's like, no, you needed some help on that one.
I'm going through something like that right now. Like I wrote a movie and I would love to direct it. And even though I kept it very compact, I know that if someone's like, hey, let's make it, I'd be sending up flares to all my expert friends to get their advice.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you have to have a certain level of healthy delusion to like direct your first couple things. Especially if you're more of like an auteur type person to like get good enough to be able to do the things you want. Like, I feel like anyone who has been around a while and has worked for other people and knows how things go wrong.
Right.
It's not possible for you to have that level of cockiness to be like, I could do this. 'Cause you're like, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The I don't know is probably the right feeling.
Instead of like,
but you also need that, like you say, that confidence of just like cocksure, like this is going to be fine. Why? Trust me,
which is always why I love Steven Seagal's directorial debut on Deadly Ground. Like, he's 8 movies in. He's like, I could fucking do this. And it's always the biggest mess, like the most beautiful mess of a disaster.
Right.
Or even like Dan Aykroyd's Nothing But Trouble, which is just insanity. I love Dan Aykroyd. I actually like that movie because it's so crazy. But you're like, you can't put Aykroyd in charge of something. Like, even he's like, guys, someone had to say no to me at some point. Like, I need to be reined in a little bit here.
My goodness. Yeah. I just remember being like grossed out.
Oh, it's disgusting.
A lot of that. Yeah. Just grossed out, not like laughing or like scared.
Yeah. It's like, what is this movie? Like his original script for Ghostbusters was 300 pages, narrative shorthand. And Harold Ramis was like, I'll make this into a script. Which, that's what made it great. Like there's some interesting ideas, but like, you kind of needed someone in there to like,
experience.
Yeah. Hone it down a little bit. So you're watching that, and then what are you doing?
And then, I'm going to reserve the right to flip over and catch one of the best movies I've ever heard of, Nuts. Going to flip over to Nuts just because the name is so perfect.
Where is Nuts? I have to see how many stars they give Nuts. This is 9:00. The Juror, Cagney and Lacey. Where is Nuts? Fled.
It just kind of made me laugh. You're like, maybe you turn on the channel and it's just like testicles. It's like, oh yeah, you know what, it delivered.
That would be called Nuts the movie.
I have no idea what Nuts was, but I was just like, You had me at nuts.
Oh yeah, they're giving that no stars and they don't tell us what it is, but now I'm curious. Although, how on earth could we Google that movie? I don't want to Google Nuts movie. I don't want to. It's one of those, it's, some, like, I'm a big fan of the band The. I can't look them up anywhere. Like, God, they were designed to break Google. But
hilarious.
Nuts the movie, you're
0 stars, remarkable.
Yeah, that is
impressive. Everything. Yeah.
So to wrap up here, the TV Guide is not just informative, it has opinions in it, cheers and jeers.
Sure.
So I'd like to read you the cheers and jeers of this week, January 3rd to the 9th, 1998. See if you agree or disagree with them.
Great. Love it.
It's a split week. Oh no, I'm not. It's a negative week. We got 3 jeers and 1 cheer. I'll do all the jeers first and end with the cheer. So we'll end on a positive note.
Wonderful.
Jeers to coddling celebrities. For 1 week, Alex Trebek brought together movers and shakers from inside the Beltway and Hollywood, luminaries from Oliver Stone to Oliver North. For Jeopardy, power players, anemic Jeopardy was more like it. Instead of challenging these well-known contestants with questions that would really gauge their knowledge, Trebek fed them a steady diet of duck soup. The CBS anchor is affectionately known as Uncle Walter. The title's fawn in Disney's 1942 film was this deer, and conclude the phrase, "What you don't know can't," were representative answers. What is laying it on too thick, Alex? Like, it's not him.
Dude. Yeah. I mean, that was my initial takeaway. Just like, let me get this straight. You think the host is also the writer of everything he says out loud?
He's coming up with these questions on the fly?
Oh, dude. Yeah. There was another moment I had where maybe he has his own set of questions in his jacket pocket. I'll get some of mine in there. You're like, no.
Yeah. Or like Ollie North meets him backstage, was like, "Hey, can you ask me these questions?" The charity I'm playing for is actually me.
Dude, yeah. Well, I'll shred all the evidence.
What a weird thing to be mad about. Like, who
cares? It really felt like they were digging deep for a jeer on that one.
Although I would like to see if Oliver Stone and Oliver North were in the same episode of Jeopardy.
That would be interesting,
It's all Olivers. Who'd the third Oliver be? Oliver Platt?
Yeah. He'd be around.
Yeah, he'd be that year.
He'd be around.
Jeers to the old shell game. Nothing confounds viewers as much as when the networks start shuffling the primetime schedule. CBS found this out the hard way recently when looking for a competitive edge. It had 48 hours in Della Ventura swap nights. Result? A disastrous lose-lose situation. On Tuesday, 48 Hours drew 2 million fewer viewers than Della Ventura usually did in the same time period. That Thursday, Danny Aiello's vigilante drama lost an even greater portion of the news magazine's average viewership. Shortly afterward, the show switched back again to their original slots. As Peter, Paul, and Mary once warbled, "When will they ever learn?" Why? That last line is totally unnecessary. I want to get one last dig at Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Yeah, I'm going to use the term warbled to describe how I see their art.
I don't remember a Danny Aiello vigilante drama, but if you said those 4 words to me, I would not hesitate to watch it. There's a bunch of actors that you could do actor named vigilante drama, and you're like, sold.
Oh yeah,
and
he's definitely one of those. And I don't know, I thought shuffling the schedule was like a standard part of these networks things to do. I thought it felt like the coin of the realm.
Right. And they switched it back. Like, this writer acts like they asked him and he was like, "Don't do that." And he's like, "Guess what they do? They did it anyway." And I was like, "I told you."
That's exactly the attitude he's taking.
It's nothing to do with him.
Yeah. We asked Derek and he blew us off. Oh,
Steve Buscemi's vigilante drama.
Oh yeah, I'm in. Oh yeah,
totally sold.
Yeah.
And jeers to setting bad examples behind the wheel. In one car commercial, a Cadillac passes a string of imported luxury cars on a winding road divided by a double yellow line. The spot was recently digitally altered to make it a passing lane. In another ad, we see a guy driving a van with a bobbing head figure on what looks like a laughing announcer Gary Owens on his dash. The driver starts doing a Macarena-like dance with his eyes closed. An air horn sounds, and the guy grabs the wheel in alarm, presumably finding himself in the path of an oncoming truck. A voiceover for a franchise law firm urges people who have been injured to call their toll-free number. Hey, if you can expect to derive compensation from an accident you caused by driving like that, as this ad implies, it's time to reform our liability statutes. So is that complaint about the commercials or about TV lawyers or about our liability statutes?
Yeah, and I think it was a missed opportunity to dig Peter, Paul, and Mary again.
What did they warble about that?
What did they warble about? No, I do remember that. And you know what? I have to be honest. I just from a legal standpoint alone, if somebody has their eyes closed and they hit me, they're not going to get a dime.
I also am like, what does the laughing Gary Owens bobblehead have to do with anything? Like, why bring him into it?
Maybe he was a part of the voiceover.
Maybe.
Call 1-800.
Have you ever had to do driving in a commercial or like driving?
I have. Yeah, I've done it a handful of times.
Was it like nerve-wracking, or were you like, I don't know how to drive this car?
A mix of the two, and that's a great question. Most of the time, it's been fine because it's been like kind of hit a mark and park and get out or something like that. The one time where I was like, I was shooting a Volkswagen commercial. It was like a Super Bowl commercial, so they had like a full crew, and I was supposed to be driving down this tree-lined street, and it had a techno crane arm. So the techno crane was on the camera was on that. It was supposed to come onto the camera. The cameras go on the hood through the windshield, come around to my side, and then land on an over of the daughter. So we had to be driving the exact same speed and going the same. And we just had it was very, very complicated. And people were getting like hot about it.
Because that's not acting. That's like them being like, okay, we need you to beat this video game while you're doing these lines.
Yeah. So it was a challenge to do. And I'm sure I wasn't the most precise driver, but like trying to drive the exact same speed for the camera to come across the hood, like maintain the focus, as it's coming around. There's a lot of focal points to pull too. So,
and I would have been like nervous about breaking millions of dollars in camera equipment if I screwed up that one.
There's that. It was just, it was probably the biggest commercial that like as far as like scale of the shoot, because there was also like a behind the scenes crew. And they were putting on a making of the commercial special on CBS before it came out. So it was the onion layers were just like, oh my goodness.
That's a ridiculous level of extra. Like, and Matt, we've brought your parents and your high school girlfriend. Like, what? Why are they here?
Totally. And it's funny because you could like get a job like that, or like the next thing you do, you go and it's just like a stage with like 4 people. Just everything is so different every single time.
It's and then finally, cheers to a clever Christmas conceit. Fox's Mad TV recently aired a sketch, A Pack of Gifts Now. Using stop motion animation, it was a remarkably authentic looking spoof on the CBS chestnut from 1964, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but a pack of gifts now gleefully merged that innocent Yuletide yarn with an ingenious and intricate parody of Apocalypse Now, the 1979 Vietnam War film starring Marlon Brando and Martin Sheen. In this revisionist narrative, Rudolph travels upriver to terminate Santa because the big guy is giving away gifts, slicing into the profit margins of greedy toy manufacturers. This was the strangest and sharpest satire we saw on television all last year.
Hey, that was great. I remember that sketch. And, I love Rankin and Bass. They're such like iconic things, so...
Did you ever see that Antiques Roadshow when the person brought in all the stop motion puppets from Rudolph?
No.
So it was in Providence, and they were like, yeah, our grandmother works at Rankin Bass, and brought these home. We play with them every Christmas, and they were up in our Christmas decorations, and we leave them by the radiator. And the guy was like, what? And they were like, because they would just throw them out. Like, so this lady was like, I'll take these for the kids. So they'd spent years, and it was worth like obviously like an ungodly amount of money.
Incredible.
And they were like, oh my God.
Wow. Yeah. No, we still have the DVDs every season, pop them in, you know. I think I got them like at a Ross or
Oh yeah.
something, you know, like that,
Yep.
like as you're about to get to the cash register, they're like, hey, how about some gumdrops or DVDs?
Solid impulse buy.
Yeah.
Favorite song in it?
For me,
Yeah.
boy, silver and gold,
Silver and Gold's a pretty good one.
because it's also not like way over
It's not
done.
super religious. Yeah, it doesn't. People don't do covers of it. Mariah Carey's not doing it. Worst
Totally.
song? We Are Santa's Elves.
Yeah. Oh, it's got to be up there. Yeah.
And then my wife always pointed out, Santa's such an asshole. They sing that whole song, and then
Yeah.
he goes, well, it needs work, and then just leaves. Like, he's not even like, good job. He's like, eh.
Yeah. Yeah. Classic.
great.
I guess he saves the love for like the children of the world.
Yeah.
And like, as usual, people closest to home, they get criticism.
I used to work with a guy who looked and talked exactly like the head elf guy, like the
Yeah.
guy in the green, the supervisor guy with the
Hermie.
goatee.
Yeah.
No, the boss guy.
Oh, yeah.
Hermie, like the angry guy.
Right.
Looked
Right.
exactly like him. It was really weird.
Wow. Wow.
But
No.
Hermie.
I'd be interested to see what happened with the, with the animatronic puppets and all that.
They
stuff.
had them
That's
restored. and
amazing.
There's, I think, one's in the Smithsonian.
Oh, wow.
And there's another couple museums that had them as like a visiting exhibit, so
Cool.
that you can see them now. And there's speaking of behind the scenes documentary, there's one about the restoration of, I think, the Rudolph,
Wow.
and it's up on YouTube. It's pretty interesting.
Cool. Yeah. Hey, get that puppet away from the radiator.
Yeah,
We're taking it to the Smithsonian.
right. They're like, this is the part we're playing where it's when Santa gets on fire. Like, how kids play with these things. Like, no, they're doing a pack of gifts now with the actual ones.
Cheers to
It's a
people.
cheers. To ruining Rankin Bass stop motion characters. That could be, for generations to come. Also, Rudolph's
Hilarious.
Shiny New Year, garbage.
Really?
Yeah, it's no good.
Yeah.
The sequels are never good. Like Halloween is Grinch Night. Ugh.
Right. Not so much, huh?
It's really
Yeah.
Peanuts is the only one where those first two Peanuts specials are great.
Right.
And then
Which again, DVDs in the drawer.
you need that. You need the physical media because there's a handful of things that if you want to go watch that and it's not streaming, you're like, my life is over.
Right.
If you're in the mood
yeah.
for it, like you can't be like, I'll watch this later or like, I'll wait. Like you need that right now, right then and there.
That's right. Yeah. Just to kind of get you a little bite of nostalgia
Yeah.
when you need it most.
Absolutely.
Hilarious.
Well, thank you so much for doing this again. It's been great to talk to you. We'll have to do this again before 10 years.
Thank you, man. I had a wonderful time.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for having. Well, let's make it another 9 years.
9 years? Yeah. Sounds
Which
good to
is
me.
9
I'll
years.
pencil that in.
Yeah, but thank you. Yeah, and I couldn't be happier for all your success with the
thank you.
pod,
Well,
and
thank you so much.
steady as she goes.
Thank you. Digger, that's Matt returning to the show. We'll have him on again in another 10 years. You can go to MattKnudsen.com or go on Amazon and buy his book, Have I Seen You in Anything? I'm holding my copy right now as I speak to you. Trust me, I am. I know I'm not going to like riffle the pages or anything so you can hear it, but I am holding it. Next week, we have a brand new episode, so I hope to see you then for that brand new episode of TV Guidance Counselor.
Looks like you got some kind of alternate universe in there or something.